First, the FutureProvider. Personally, I've had very little use for FutureProvider. If I ever need to write something, I'd rather use a Future Builder instead of FutureProvider. Anyway, let's talk about it. What is FutureProvider used for? FutureProvider is a provider that is used when the widget tree has already been built, but the value you want to use is not yet ready. This means that the widget tree has to wait for a value. This is pretty much the same thing as a Future Builder. FutureProvider has an initial data property, which is a required property. It must be provided. While waiting for the future to resolve, initial data is displayed, and when the future is resolved, the widget is rebuilt. And of course, it will be rebuilt only once. So this means it builds twice, once with initial data and once with the value resolved later, and then it's finished. If you want to rebuild widgets with several successively changing values, you can use a stream provider. And when using features that can cause errors, you must provide a catch error method. Otherwise, it is regarded as an error. Now, let's create an app to apply the FutureProvider. In this example, we will test the FutureProvider by slightly modifying the Provider Overview 05 app. Let's start by creating the Provider Overview 06 app and copying everything from Provider Overview 05. I will create babies.dart under the models folder and create the babies class. I'll create an integer type final variable age to store the dog baby's age. I'll create a constructor using generate constructor. I'll create an async function called getBabies that returns integer type future. We will make it so it waits 3 seconds when the function is called. If age is greater than 1 and less than 5, return 4. If age is 1 or less, return 0. Otherwise, return 2. Let's go to main.dart and add a FutureProvider using multi-provider. First, wrap the existing change notify provider with multi-provider. Copy, then format the change notify provider we made previously for the first element of the providers list. The change notify provider that previously wrapped material app is no longer needed, so delete it, and since we changed the app to the 6th app, change all 5s to 6. This is a FutureProvider. I made babies into a class earlier, but here the type is int. It's not babies. But FutureProvider has a return value of future as its type. However, future is not babies, but the getBabies method of babies instance. And the return value of that method is int type. So the type is int. This means that if future is returned, it can be used within a FutureProvider. Also, even if future is defined in a certain class, it does not return the class. This is also true for stream provider, which we will see later. And one more thing to note is that the age was read from the dog change notify instance through context.read. This is possible because change notify provider is a parent widget of FutureProvider, and FutureProvider is also a widget. Give a size box with height 10.0 to secure space between this widget and the next widget. Display the number of babies in the text widget, and remember that the return type of the FutureProvider was integer. So in context watch, the type is int, and the font size will be 20.0. Let's run it after doing a hard restart. The number of babies changes to 4 after a moment. The grow button also works normally. Shall we try again? I will do a hard restart again and wait for a moment. It changes to 4 and the grow button also works normally. Shall we use read instead of watch here? Let's change it to read and do a hard restart. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've been waiting and it didn't change. When I clicked grow, only then did the number change. This was not changed by FutureProvider. The value was just updated when the widget was rebuilt. And this means if you use read instead of watch when reading a feature, only the initial value is displayed once. Now let's take a look at the stream provider.